The Senate will come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Senators Baisley, Bridges,
Excused.
Buckner, Senator Buckner,
Excused.
Coleman, Cutter, Senator Cutter,
Excused.
Danielson, Exum, Fields, Gardner, Janal, Gonzalez, Hanson, Hinrichsen, Huckes Lewis, Kirkmeyer, Kolker, Liston, Lundin, Marchman, Michelson Janae, Malika, Pelton B, Pelton R, Priola, Rich, Roberts, Rodriguez, Simpson, Smallwood, Senator Smallwood,
Excused.
Sullivan, Van Winkle, Will, Winter, Zenzinger, Senator Zenzinger. Shall I go back? I do not. I do not. Senator Cutter? Senator Smallwood. Senator Smallwood. Senator Smallwood. Mr. President.
Here. The morning roll call is 32 present, 0 absent, 3 excused. We do have a quorum. Senator Marchman, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Will you please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk please add Senator Buckner to the roll? Approval of the journal. Senator Baisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate Journal of January 29, 2024 be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no? The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. Senate Services.
January 30th, 2024, correctly printed Senate Bill 105, correctly engrossed Senate Bills 29 and 30.
Committee reports.
Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 58 be amended as follows, and as so amended, be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation, and with a recommendation that it be placed on the consent calendar. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 6 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 52 be amended as follows, and as so amended, be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. Committee on Transportation and Energy, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 56 be amended as follows, and as so amended, be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. Committee on Education, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 34 be amended as follows, and as so amended, be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 14 be amended as follows, and as so amended, be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation.
Introduction of resolutions.
Senate Joint Resolution 6, Senators Fields and Gardner, Representatives Duran and Pugliese, concerning the designation of February 4 as Missing Persons Day in Colorado.
Mr. Majority Leader. Majority Leader Rodriguez. We need to lay over the resolution.
1006. Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we lay over Resolution 1006 until Friday, February 2nd, 2024.
The motion is to lay over Senate Joint Resolution 6 until Friday, February 2nd. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no? The ayes have it, and that resolution will lay over until Friday. General orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar. Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? The ayes have it. The motion is adopted, and the Senate will resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of the general order, second reading of bills, consent calendar, and Senator Marchman will take the chair.
The committee will come to order, and the court rule is relaxed for everybody. Will the clerk please read the title of the bill on the general orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar?
Senate Bill 4, Senators Pelton, R. and Fields, Representatives Frizzell and
Major-
Winstead, concerning the administration of county veterans service offices.
Majority Leader Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move for the adoption of Senate Bill 4 on the consent calendar and the Associated State Veterans Military Affairs Committee report.
Is there any discussion on the committee report? The motion before the body is the adoption of the committee report on the general orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. Is there any discussion on the bill on the consent calendar? The motion before the body is the adoption of the bill on the general orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Opposed, no. All right, the ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Majority Leader Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is for the committee to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, the motion's adopted. The committee will rise and report. Oh, that's me. I know, I'm going back up. Yes. Share space. Are we talking about? I was gonna say, are we talking noxious weeds?
Yeah, so like, it's usually taking this long in their chairs. They have to change it.
It's because of me. I mean, you asked me to come here. I am here for you.
I'm here defending the patriot.
I know. Well, clearly. I mean, duh. I'm here, and I'm here on behalf of the patriarchy, and we've come to save the day.
I thought it was the horses.
Yeah. It's so good.
It's a big problem. Like,
Computers.
Russian only, just as infested landscape. It sucks up so much. Rachel actually made that joke yesterday. She said, I can't believe you're built like a calendar.
I need one too. Yes, the consent calendar. No. Yes. like I thought of it like at 6 in the morning, and like I'm not gonna like text him at 6 in the morning. I should have just said,
It's gonna either be the 12th or 14th.
yeah. Thank you. Did you get up to Loveland at all? Do you ever get up there this weekend? Oh, fun.
Two of the grandkids up there have birthday parties.
Oh, cool. That's so fun. How old are the grandkids?
So, the two up there have birthdays. One in the middle.
Oh my gosh, they have their hands full. Oh my goodness. And right as this 11-year-old starts getting into all the things, the rest of them will be right behind them. What are their names?
Boston. Yeah, boy. And then Jefferson.
And then just say. Oh, two girls. Do they? It's fun that you're close enough when you do this that you
The middle one, Jefferson.
She's adorable.
Boston Park.
Look at that hair. Oh, she's adorable. I think you did okay. They are adorable. Awesome. You too.
The Senate will come to order. Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has had a bill under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
January 30th, 2024. Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report it has had under consideration of the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof, and makes the following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 4 is amended, passed on second reading, and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for the third reading and final passage.
Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the report.
The motion is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent to excuse, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 4 is amended, passed on second reading and ordered engrossed, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Will the clerk please add Senators Bridges and Cutter to the roll?
Morning. Thank you.
General orders. Second reading of bills. Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of general orders, second reading of bills.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of the general order, second reading of bills, and Senator Marchman will take the chair. Yeah, that's yours.
Everywhere I go. The committee will come to order, and the coat rule is relaxed for everyone. Will the clerk please read the title to SB 31?
Senate Bill 31, Senator Roberts, Representatives Lukens and McLaughlin, concerning local authority to enforce violations of laws related to the prevention of noxious weeds.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 31.
Thank you. Is there? There's an amendment on the desk. There's an amendment on the desk. No, I don't remember.
Clarifies that the Board of County Commissioners can do an injunction, not the county attorney.
Will the clerk please read Amendment 1?
Amendment 1, Senator Roberts, amend printed bill, page 4.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L001.
Is there any discussion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a cleanup amendment after some testimony in committee last week. It just simply says that the Board of County Commissioners is the ultimate decision maker, not the county attorney, and that the county attorney shall petition to the district court for an injunction, not issue the injunction themselves. I ask for an aye vote.
The motion is the adoption of Amendment 1. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. To the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, I bring forward Senate Bill 31 after a lot of feedback and requests from counties in my district, and we also heard from other counties across the state last week in committee. What this is about is allowing counties to enforce the Colorado Noxious Weed Act. Right now, a lot of counties feel they don't have enough enforcement authority to ensure that landowners are abiding by the Noxious Weed Act. For those of you that don't know, noxious weeds are can be very costly to agriculture and to general ecological health. And that's why we've had the Noxious Weed Act since 1990, but this bill adds clarification that county commissioners, county governments can be part of the enforcement authority of the Noxious Weed Act. We heard in testimony last week from Democratic commissioners and Republican commissioners asking for this, but we also heard that some counties are already doing this, but we're thankful to the counties who did come forward and want this clarification in law to make sure that they actually can be part of the enforcement. This is a good bill for agriculture, for rural Colorado, and enforcement of existing laws. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I heard the bill in committee last week in Ag Committee and struggled, handily about my position on the bill, dealing with and fighting noxious weeds, on my farm and their origin and where they come from. The bill seems a little too aggressive in trying to enforce some action against individuals when the problem is so much bigger. I mean, those weeds that end up on my place originate in another county, sometimes on federal land, sometimes on state land, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It's such a broad, big, challenging problem. I'd rather see a more focused effort more broadly from the Department of Agriculture than from individual counties and a bit of a heavy-handed approach to really trying to penalize individual landowners when it's not going to solve the problem of expansive noxious weeds, and particularly on my farm in particular. So that was my position of why I was opposed to the weed bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Pelton, B.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a problem with this because we don't have any authority. When I say we, former county commissioner, we don't have any authority to fine the Colorado Department of Wildlife or the CDOT, which in my community, that's the biggest offender to noxious weeds. We have lots of Canadian thistle that grow along the river that the Colorado Department of Wildlife will not take care of. And we also have lots of other problems from CDOT that don't take care of their weeds. So, and I also have an issue with certain counties possibly using this as a revenue stream and only punishing some people but not punishing other people. So I have an issue with that as well. So I'm going to be a no vote, and I ask for a no vote on the bill.
Senator Pelton, R.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am also going to be a no vote. I was no in committee. When I was county commissioner, we actually dissolved our noxious weed department in our county because if these weeds aren't addressed, they become obnoxious weeds, and then you've lost the battle. So the other thing, I think they're going to have a hard time finding county commissioners especially in these counties with a lot of agriculture, like my counties, that are going to have the fortitude to enforce this. You know, it's given them a lot of authority that some of them just don't really want to have. So with that, I am going to be a no vote on the bill.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, it's alarming to me that no one has spoken on behalf of noxious weeds themselves. And while I'm somewhat undecided on this bill, I learned that the reality about noxious weeds is that while they are a problem for agriculture and truly are, they may play a vital role in the ecosystem. And, you know, I am, as all of you, concerned about the environment. In particular, ragwort, which is regarded as a noxious weed, is one of the top flower meadow nectar sources in the UK. And its early blooming period is particularly helpful in the establishment of bumblebee policies. So, you know, the war on noxious weeds is important, but bumblebees may be collateral damage. Members, in all seriousness, what this highlighted for me is that what sometimes seems to be a straightforward issue really has a balancing act going on, and we as legislators, even when dealing with noxious weeds, need to be very thoughtful, and that's why it may lead to a yes vote by one colleague and a no vote by another, because when people say to me here after all these years, there's no opposition to this bill, I always say, well, you just haven't been here long enough, because even noxious weeds have friends in this building. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Minority Leader Lundin.
Not to put too fine of a point on it, but as an echo and a reinforcement of the argument you just heard, we're dealing with, in this state right now, a very controversial reintroduction of what was once considered to be a noxious animal in Colorado. We are reintroducing, for the benefit of the balance of the ecology, wolves into the ecosystem of Colorado. And yet, here we are now, and I realize we're trying to manage exactly how we do this, but I think it's possible that this is a step on the path that we once took that eradicated wolves from Colorado. We were handing authority to the additional authority, something that has been a matter of statewide interest and statewide management under the Ag Department for years. We're handing authority to deal with that down to the county commission level. What if they get overly aggressive? What if the next thing you know, they're eliminating bumblebee populations in a county? I mean, we need to think about this carefully. And there are details and nuances in this that may or may not get the appropriate consideration. Now, I'm all in for local control of matters that are specifically local, but we've already heard from people that know far better than anybody in this chamber, far better than I do, that the weed seed that they're fighting on their ranch didn't come from within the county. It came from the neighboring county, very likely, possibly the neighboring state for that matter. So consider carefully what we're doing here. We wouldn't want some General Assembly 30 years hence to have to reintroduce toadflax to Colorado in order to rebalance our ecosystem.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of SB 31. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted.
You guys are pro-weed. You guys are pro-noxious weeds now?
No, it's about how you control them and how hard-handed. Yeah, I know.
Gavel. Thank you. Will the clerk please read the title to SB 5?
Canadian thistle can look pretty nice too.
That argument could already be made, I think.
Will the clerk please read the title to SB 24-5?
Senate Bill 5, Senators Roberts and Simpson, Representatives McCormick and McLaughlin, concerning the conservation of water in the state through the prohibition of certain landscaping practices.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 5 and the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee report.
To the Ag and Natural Resources Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the committee, we adopted a strike below amendment, L003. The strike below was the result of a lot of further conversations after our Agriculture and Water Resources and Ag Review Committee that voted this bill out in October. Essentially, what the strike below does is make very clear the definition of functional turf and non-functional turf, and as to provide clarity to entities and folks that will be looking at this law in the future. So thanks to all the work that went into this strike below, and I ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Is there any discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of the Ag and Natural Resources Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was happy to join my good friend, the senator from Avon, in advancing this water conservation conversation again this year on the heels of, a turf buyback bill we introduced and sponsored a couple years ago that was hugely successful, much to my surprise. This was like a next step in an effort and in recognition of the things the state needs to work on or has potential to work on to improve our water security issue. And, I'll just demonstrate for what, every week I print and post in my office, the drought monitor for the state of Colorado. You can see we continue to largely be in a drought. This has really been ongoing, really since 2002. It's really not a drought anymore. It truly is the aridification of the West, and we all are trying to figure out how to live and function and work in this space. I also put out what's characterized as the snow water equivalent. This is a measure of the snowpack and the water content in the snowpack as compared to the history. Ironically, it's only compared to the last 30 years, which include 20 of the driest years in our history, over like 1,200 years. So you can see the southern half of the state is well below average. The northern half of the state is approaching average, but it feels like it's been a really good year, particularly given some of the prior years. So where we can take, some time and effort and energy to advance water conservation efforts statewide, I'm supportive. It puts me in kind of a weird space of competing priorities, that local control versus statewide interest. This is where, it was hugely apparent to me that this is an issue of statewide importance where we can make some impact and move the needle in that space of water security issues in the state of Colorado. I think it's a good bill. I know I've asked, what's the magnitude of what we're talking about? And the bill really just talks about turf going forward, not historical. But visiting with Denver Water, how much of this, quote, non-functional turf is in their service area? Estimations are there's 5,000 or 6,000 acres of non-functional turf in Denver Water's service area. So it makes a difference, and it will make an impact. As incremental as it is, it's still important in closing that water security gap. I urge an aye vote on Senate Bill 5.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and my gratitude to the good senator from Alamosa for his work on this issue and water issues more broadly. He put it well. This is one more tool in the toolbox to help Colorado conserve more of our precious water resources. As we face an ongoing drought for many, for several decades already and probably several decades more, we need to look at every possible way to conserve water in the state of Colorado. This is additive to that process. This is not the only solution. But as the senator mentioned, we passed a bill a couple years ago that created a turf replacement program and funding through the Department of Natural Resources to help cities and communities do turf replacement. What this bill is about is not even putting that non-functional turf in the first place. This bill only applies to new development or redevelopment. It does not apply to residential homes. This is about industrial, commercial, and government property across the state. And it says, as I mentioned earlier, it defines what functional turf is and what non-functional turf is, and says don't put in non-functional turf in these new developments, so that we don't even have to start watering that turf in the first place and we never have to replace it in the future. This is a bill that will help the entire state, primarily in these large municipalities here on the Front Range that have a lot of non-functional turf or consider installing non-functional turf. If they can use less water, that means less water needs to be sent over the Continental Divide here to the Front Range, or more water needs to be taken from the Eastern Plains allotment. This will help our agriculture communities, our outdoor recreation economies that rely on our water resources, and it's a good, well-reasoned step forward that a lot of cities in Colorado have already taken, and this would add the state to that effort. So with that, I thank everybody who's worked very hard on this policy since we started considering it in the summer in our interim committee, and ask for an aye vote on Senate Bill 5.
Senator Pelton, R.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to get up. I was a no vote in committee. There's some conversations happening that especially the sod growers would like some redefinition instead of just non-functional, maybe utility turf, because at the end of the day, all turf, no matter what, whether it's artificial or natural, it has a purpose. It's there for a reason. And so, words make difference. And so that was one of the reasons. Another reason, I'm very much about local control. A lot of these communities along the Front Range are already implementing this sort of practice. And I don't think we need the big hand of government, state government, forcing that. So with that, I will still be a no on the vote.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And a question for the sponsors. Municipal use in Colorado is about 7% of total. Ag use is about 88.5% of total use in the state. How much do we think Senate Bill 5 will save in that 7% category?
Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a good question, but it's predicated on if we knew how much turf was going to be installed going forward. Again, that was my question to Denver Water, to get some perspective of what exists currently. The bill doesn't say we're going to take turf out. The bill says going forward we're not going to add any more. So it's only going to have a small incremental impact on the percentage. But again, if you could turn the clock back and have done this 20 years ago or 30 years ago, it's in the 10,000 acre feet range probably. And again, from a percentage point of the total, it's minimal, as was the turf replacement program. But it's about closing the gap as small incremental steps as you can versus a large sweeping change. So that's the best I could do. That's great.
Senator Hansen.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And to the good senator from Alamosa, thank you. That is really helpful to understand kind of what we think the impact of this bill is going to be. I really like Senate Bill 5. I think it is in the long tradition of the incredible efforts that the metro areas, like the areas served by Denver Water, have made over the last 30 years to conserve water. If you look at per capita use, if you look at the measures taken after some of the major drought events over the last 30 years, huge progress, huge gains in conservation from Denver Water and the other Front Range water districts. So I am inclined to support Senate Bill 5. I think it fits nicely in that tradition. But I want to share one important point. I think Senate Bill 5 is missing some things. I think Senate Bill 5 is not as inclusive as it should be. Ag use in this state is almost 90% of all the water use. Why don't we have anything before us that speaks to conservation on the ag side? And what I can't understand is how the interim committee this summer came forward with Senate Bill 5. That's great. I'm glad it got a majority vote. But what about some common sense efforts to also conserve water on the ag side? How did those fall short this summer? Why aren't those included in this bill? We've had nothing on advancing the ATM discussion, alternative transfer mechanisms. Where is legal flexibility for farmers to be able to retain water rights as they do conservation? Right now we have a use it or lose it philosophy. That leads to a lot of wasted water. In fact, last summer I had a chance to visit some ranchers that operate near Kremling, and they are in a pilot project right now with CSU to look at the positive effects of not doing flood irrigation. It actually increased the productivity of their land. But because of our current water law, it makes that conservation almost impossible for that farmer or that water right holder to not lose their water rights. Where are the conservation measures on the ag side? Sure, let's get rid of non-functional turf. Let's not put any more of that in. Fantastic. But I feel like the interim water committee let us down by not bringing forward anything that advances conservation on what is by far the largest category of use, almost 90% on the ag side. And so I'd invite our sponsors, if they have any background for us, I'd love to hear a bit more. But I feel like Senate Bill 5 is missing an extremely important element, and would love to know what is next on that front.
Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the comments from the good senator from Denver. The ag community has been working for decades in the conservation space and paying a heavy price. In my community, we are taking, I don't know, in the neighborhood of 10 to 20,000 irrigated acres out of production, conserving water to create a healthy aquifer system. And it's necessity. It's the only way we're going to survive is by conservation efforts. The amount of ground that's transitioned from flood ground to sprinkler ground is amazing. And it's all predicated on us maintaining a standard of living, a way of life. But it's so impactful, these dwindling supplies. What happens generally, routinely, is municipal interests, particularly Front Range interests, don't feel that huge impact of dwindling supplies. I feel it on my farm every day. When my water supply out of the Rio Grande ends on May the 20th, when historically it has lasted into mid-July, that's impactful to me. I've got to figure out ways to grow different crops that are less water consumptive use, more efficiency, and ultimately taking irrigated acres out of production. And there is statutory authority, producers that want to participate in conservation programs. That water right is protected in that space. You don't lose it or use it or lose it in that space. And what you're really talking about using and losing is the consumptive use of that water right. Routinely, this gets tied up in how much water you divert versus how much water you consume. What you own and have access to is only what is consumed on your property. If you're diverting 4 acre-feet of water per acre and you're only consuming 1, the value of what you own and are at risk of losing is only the 1 acre, not the 4 acres that you're diverting. That's where increased efficiency comes in play, and it's not a true use it or lose it scenario. Happy to speak on ag for the rest of the day if we want to, about the efforts we've done and taken to be more conservative and more thoughtful and close the gap that we experience every day.
Senator Pelton B.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to reinforce that argument. The Republican River has to so far have 12,000 acres that they retired to stay within the compact. 25,000 acres they have to get total. We're taking water out of production and we are being more efficient with it. We used to flood irrigate. We don't do that anymore. We use sprinklers. And we use technology on sprinklers now that put the water closer to the ground. These are efforts that we're using so we have less evaporation and more that goes to the crop. We feel this crunch every day. My irrigated farmers in my district, they do everything they possibly can to stay in business. We are conservationists. That's what we do. That's how we make a living, because we live off the land, period. So this, I have some reservations about this bill. I'm an aye vote because I have some reservations about the return flows that we're going to be missing out of that 7%. I do have some reservations about that because the return flows come to us downstream. But I'm willing to make that sacrifice to be able to say, hey, we're going to use less water here so we can still use it. And if you look at me, I like to eat. So agriculture is fundamental to this state and to my district. It is our economy. So I ask for an aye vote on this bill.
Senator Pelton, R.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And actually, the acres that have to be retired in the Republican are 27,000. So we know about conservation. The good senator from Sterling talked about technology. A lot of these sprinklers have been re-nozzled to even make them more efficient, to use less water to grow the same amount of crops. So this bill doesn't address agriculture, but agriculture has been addressing this problem for a long time. And so with that, I just wanted to come up and make that argument also.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pardon me for sort of calling you out, asking you to commit off the record, but is there anybody here that thinks that water and the availability of water in Colorado is not an issue? Anybody? Anybody? Well, I see someone back in the lobby, but I think he's a jokester. Anybody here not believe in local control? Yeah, at least someone says depends on the bill. Well, local control is like one of the 10 Commandments or founding principles of our state. It is actually. Before I get into the discussion of this bill, a serious question for the sponsors. Is there any major community, municipality, county in Colorado, or even smaller, that is experiencing development and so forth? Is there any one of them out there, local government, that is not already doing something like what this bill does? Because if there is, talk about calling people out, we need to call it where it is. But Colorado Springs is. Maybe the city and county of Denver isn't. I don't know. Maybe Boulder. Maybe Boulder is lagging on this. Fort Collins, maybe? I don't know. Can you tell me who is not doing what this bill, on behalf of the state, is going to invade into local control, into home rule powers? Who's not doing it? Do we need to do this bill? Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to respond to the good senator from Colorado Springs' question, yes, there is not a uniform standard across the state. Some cities are doing this much better than others. Some cities, frankly, can't afford to have a program and guidance on this, and so that's where the state is going to provide some leadership, similar to the way that we have with the turf replacement program. Before we passed the turf replacement program bill 2 years ago, there were several cities who had their own turf replacement programs. What the state has been able to do is catalog all that information and provide guidance to more that want to do across the state. So there are some very large municipalities. City of Aurora comes to mind, passed by their city council and signed by their mayor. This bill essentially, except they went even further. They prohibited new non-functional turf at residential locations. And we appreciate their leadership on that. This bill is much more mild than that, but it does create a statewide standard. And frankly, water, if you don't think water is a statewide issue in Colorado, we could have a much longer discussion, but this is about the future of our state. Every part of the state needs to play a part.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I don't know. It seems like there may be language that allows communities to go further than the bill, but the assertion is not that water is a matter of statewide concern. I think my initial remarks sort of were reflective of my view that it is. I'm just wholly unconvinced that a bill at the state level setting some standards that are less than what some communities are doing, which would seem to me to be discouraging other communities who maybe haven't gone as far as some of the other communities from doing any more. After all, we don't need to do any more. This is the state standard. This is what the Colorado General Assembly, signed by the governor, most likely is doing. We really ought to ask ourselves if we're not cutting off efforts to do this. That's the policy with respect to turf and water usage is not my concern here at its core. It is, are we actually cutting off some efforts? I mean, we're not going to tell them they can't, but it sort of says, well, this is a settled issue. State's done what the state's going to do. As to the comment about agriculture juxtaposed, I've heard this over and over and over again about the use of water by agriculture in Colorado. You know, growing stuff and growing stuff to feed other stuff. See, I have some understanding of agriculture. It's about growing stuff and growing stuff to feed other stuff to grow. Takes a lot of water. And sometimes I think people isolate that and say, well, you know, that's agriculture. It's just every time I go to the store and I see that ABC sign and I buy that sack of potatoes, I buy that melon, and any number of other things, and yes, buy that piece of red meat. And pork and chicken. That water that we talked about made its way to my plate. So let's always keep that in mind as well. But the turf on the lawn in the median, which I don't think we're doing anymore, not where I live, that doesn't find its way to my plate at all. So I think we all agree that this is a matter of concern, but I really question whether passing a state law, it's kind of like we're catching up. We're going to catch up with the communities. We're going to catch up with the local governments. And it reminds me of that story I've heard over the course of my lifetime of the guy running up to a group of people and saying, have you seen another group of people headed some direction? And they said, well, no, not really. Why are you looking for them? Well, I'm their leader. It seems to me that we're saying, I'm your leader, local communities. I'm looking, let me get ahead of you, but we're not even really ahead of some of them. So I have reservations about the bill. I appreciate the sponsors bringing it. I think this is a vital discussion, but rather than rather than say vote yes or vote no, I just ask everyone to think really hard about whether this, as a bill that impinges upon local control, upon home rule, is the appropriate response, or whether we ought to just incentivize and encourage more of that at the local level. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of SB 5. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Majority Leader Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
Motion before the committee is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come to order. Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had 2 bills under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
January 30th, 2024. Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report it has had under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof, and makes the following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 5 is amended and Senate Bill 31 is amended, passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for adoption of the report.
The motion is the adoption of the committee of the whole report. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 5 is amended and Senate Bill 31 is amended, passed on second reading, order engrossed, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Consideration of resolutions. Will the clerk please read the title of House Joint Resolution 1005?
House Joint Resolution 1005, Representatives Satone and Weinberg, Senators Bridges and Hinrichsen, concerning requesting that the Federal Trade Commission facilitate the use of repairability scores that indicate to consumers the repairability of electronic devices.
Senator Henriksen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Joint Resolution 24-1005.
Is there any discussion? Senator Henriksen.
Thank you again, Mr. President. Colleagues, when you go to the hardware store to get a new dryer, is the $500 dryer cheaper or the $550 one? You would think maybe the $500 one, but on every washer and dryer, there are Energy Star guides on them that tell you how much energy they consume and an estimate of how much it will cost you to run that appliance. And you may sit there in the aisle of the Home Depot and do some math by yourself and realize that the $550 dryer over a term of a year or 2 years may be the cheaper dryer for you and your family. When you go to purchase a car, you see marked on the window of the car what the EPA estimated fuel mileage is and can assess what that might mean for your family budget. And you can see the crash test rating of that vehicle and assess if that's the choice that's right for you and your family. When you're making the purchase of a consumer electronic that is going to cost you over the course of its use into the thousands of dollars, shouldn't you be able to know reasonably what the repairability of that product is? What House Joint Resolution 24-1005 does is it asks the Federal Trade Commission to promulgate into rule what several other countries have already done and require the disclosure of some basic information that allows consumers to make an informed choice when they're purchasing these electronic devices that will cost into the thousands of dollars over the course of its use on their ability to repair it if something goes wrong. I ask for your support of House Joint Resolution 1005.
Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. President. Knowledge is power. This bill is about empowering consumers with the knowledge they need to make good decisions in the marketplace. It's not about directing that marketplace to behave in any particular way. It is purely about consumer choice. Ask for an aye vote.
Further discussion. Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to add some context to the resolution, and it's at a fairly philosophical level. I'm looking at the long time label index, understanding what's known as the repairability index. It's available to you on this new thing called the internet. You can find and see repairability indices for washing machines, computers, smartphones, televisions, lawnmowers. I would argue, and this is just one of many sources. This is not consumer guides, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is one of many sources. My argument essentially is, I personally, and take your own pathway, would rather that the marketplace of ideas, that the hurly-burly and challenge and tug and pull and give and take that creates competitiveness, enhances quality, and evaluates by virtue of experience, shared experience, now shared on the internet. Anybody ever log into Yelp to check out which restaurant might be serving the better food these days? Is the way to do this. I think we go the wrong direction if we say to the federal government in Washington, D.C., hey, we have one more thing that we want you to do well because you do so many things well, and hand to them the responsibility for creating a new index, a government index about repairability. So we could probably get into the minutia of this and debate it for hours and hours and hours. I will simply say, washing machines, computers, smartphones, television, lawnmowers, one source among many. Longtimelabel.com, don't need to put a plug in for them, but you can go check it out. Consumer Reports and others. Find out how repairable things are without having the government tell you what they think repairability looks like. I will be a no vote on the resolution for the reasons I've just mentioned.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I won't be long. I I concur with the remarks of the minority leader about the availability of these repairability scores. You know, when I go to the Home Depot or Lowe's, or I don't want to favor, or the Ace Hardware, I hope I've mentioned every one of them, because I go to each and every one of them. Sometimes when I have a home repair project, I go to each and every one of them on the same morning. The trouble with repairability scores or an index, my partner has a son who is literally so talented that there is nothing in the world he cannot fix. Me, I'm a simple country lawyer. And so the fix is in, yes. The repairability score for Justin is like there's nothing he can't repair. And the repairability score for Bob is, maybe I should call Justin.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of House Joint Resolution 1005. Are there any no votes? Senators Van Winkle, Will, Baisley, Rich, Gardner, Minority Leader Lundin, Liston, Pelton R., with a vote of 27 ayes, 8 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Joint Resolution 1005 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Cutter, Michelson, Janae. Will the clerk please read the title to House Joint Resolution 1006?
House Joint Resolution 1006, Representatives McCormick and Catlin, Senators Roberts and Pelton R., concerning the designation of Colorado 4-H Day.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Joint Resolution 006. 1006.
Is there any discussion?
Colleagues, this is the resolution honoring 4-H Day, which was yesterday, of course. The House passed this resolution they read the resolution in the fanfare. We won't do that today, but we just want to thank you for honoring the 4-H kids that were in the building yesterday. I think they had a great time, and we know how important they are to our community and would ask for an aye vote on this resolution.
Senator Pelton.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, yesterday we talked about the importance of 4-H program in our communities and in my family. It's too bad the kids aren't here to see a resolution passed out of the Senate, but with that, I'd ask for an aye vote also.
See no further discussion. The motion before the body is the adoption of House Joint Resolution 1006. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Joint Resolution 1006 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors on House Joint Resolution 1006. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 4?
Senate Joint Resolution 4, Senators Roberts and Simpson, Representatives McCormick and Catlin, concerning approval of water project revolving fund eligibility lists administered by the Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority.
Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, colleagues, this is what I characterize as a recurring joint resolution, but it's anything but routine. It's very impactful to, I'm sure, every member in here has either wastewater or freshwater facilities in your districts that are impacted by this. This is an update to the eligibility list is what it is. But again, very important to all our communities in both the wastewater space in the revolving loan fund and the drinking water revolving loan fund. Ask for an aye vote.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. Not too much to add. If you all pull out the resolution, you can look through the list. It lists every eligible project, and as the good senator said, likely one or many from your district in there. These are very important projects, and we thank the Water and Power Authority for all their hard work. And with that, I move Senate Joint Resolution 004 and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 4. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 4 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Van Winkle, Will, Rich, Gardner, Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll speed things up and ask that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be added as a co-sponsor on Senate Joint Resolution 4. Consideration of governor's appointments, consent calendar. Will the clerk please read all of the appointments on the consent calendar?
Members of the Fire and Police Pension Association Board of Directors for terms expiring September 1, 2027. Jason Mantis of Timnath, Colorado to serve as full-time paid firefighter reappointed. Tammy Hitchens of Westminster, Colorado to represent Colorado Municipal Employers reappointed.
Majority Leader Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the confirmation of the appointments listed in the consent calendar, which includes the following members of the Fire and Police Pension Association: Jason Manta and Tammy Hitchens.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the confirmation of the appointments on the consent calendar. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, the appointments are confirmed. Announcements. Senator Rich.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm asking for a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
The Colorado Mesa University, their annual legislative reception is this evening at the Clayton Hotel. It will be in the Members Club sunroom from 4 to 6, and you are all invited to attend. Thank you.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, the Senate Local Government and Housing Committee will be meeting today at 2 p.m., SCR 352. We have two bills on the calendar, SB 002 and SB 021, and we look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Senator Kolker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, the Senate Finance Committee will meet at 2 p.m. today in SCR 357, and we have 5 bills on the calendar. Thank you.
Senator Liston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow senators, I want to remind you of an event taking place this evening, and hopefully you'll be able to join me for the Colorado Society of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons are having their second annual reception here this evening. It will take place this evening at 5:30 at the Venture X, which is just across the street from the Civic Center. I think a lot of you all have been there. Just briefly a bit about the folks that you may be meeting tonight. The Colorado Society of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons is an association of oral and maxillofacial surgeons that practice here in Colorado. These are very highly trained surgeons that they have a hospital-based residency program for a minimum of 4 years. They train alongside medical residents in internal medicine, general surgery, plastic surgery, and emergency medicine. You may need their services someday, so it's a great opportunity to come meet these highly trained surgeons. I hope you'll come and meet these highly trained people. There'll be food and beverage, and we'll see you there. It starts at 5:30. I know there's other events, but if you can stop by, I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Senator Will.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a reminder, you got all the Sportsman's Caucus up here with my co-chair for the Congressional Sportsman's Caucus is tonight at the Buckhorn Exchange. So come down and eat with us and mingle. Colorful brochure. Second part is you all received this in your mailboxes. Please read it. If you know anything about zoonotic diseases, you probably ought to read this. And it's got some great information there. We talk about the wolf introduction. This is some of this might be critical into the future of Colorado. So it's good information. Please read it. Thank you.
Further announcements. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate adjourn until 9 a.m. on Wednesday, January 31st, 2024.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will adjourn until tomorrow at 9 a.m.